May 30th, 1967, in Enugu, a single declaration will shatter a country. Enugu is the heart of eastern Nigeria. The eastern region stood at a crossroad torn between survival and unity. Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, military governor of the eastern region, prepared to address the Consultative Assembly. Within hours, a bold declaration would echo across the nation, signaling the birth of a new state, the Republic of Biafra. But this moment was the accumulation of years of political tension, ethnic violence, and failed diplomacy. The country had been pushed to the brink, and the decisions made that day will alter the course of history forever. To understand why May 30th became inevitable, one must look back at January 1967. The Aburi Accord, negotiated in Ghana at the Pedroese Lodge, had brought together the top military leaders of Nigeria. That was the final attempt to reconcile differences after two violent coups in 1966. The Eastern leaders, led by Ojukwu, sought guarantees that the lives and properties of the Eastern citizens would rather be protected, especially after the massacres of the Igbos in the north following the July counter-coup. Northern officers, however, interpreted their agreement in their own terms. What was meant to preserve unity instead exposed a growing rift. In the eyes of Ojukwu and his advisors, diplomacy had failed. The Aburi Accord had become a fragile, misinterpreted promise, incapable of protecting those it was meant to serve. January 15, 1966, marked the first violent rupture. A coup primarily orchestrated by Igbo officers, including Major Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, targeted political leaders in the north and the west. Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa and Premier Ahmadu Bello were killed. The country was shaken. Major General Aguiyi assumed power as the head of state. As in our previous videos, for a time it seemed the nation might stabilize, but underlying ethnic tensions simmered beneath the surface. By July 1966, counter-coup erupted, led by northern officers. This resulted in the death of several eastern officers. Targeted attacks against the Igbos across northern Nigeria. Yakubu Gowon became head of state, facing the impossible task of maintaining national unity in a nation fractured along ethnic and regional lines. The eastern region, already wary, viewed these events as a proof that their people's safety would no longer be guaranteed within the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Nigeria is indeed in danger of disintegration. This danger is very real and can only be removed if we can restore in the country the vital elements of good faith and confidence, the two shattered essentials of mutual cooperation and trust. We shall do this only if we, the military leaders now saddled with the responsibility for running this country, can approach our task and face our problems with a sense of realism, objectivity, and a spirit freed from past prejudices and sectional ambitions.
3 days before the declaration of Biafra, Major General Yakubu Gowon took a decisive step that will be viewed as provocative by Eastern leadership. On May 27, 1967, he announced the creation of 12 states, fragmenting the 4 historical regions of Nigeria. This decision was not spontaneous. It had been carefully planned by Gowon and key advisors, including Brigadier Hassan Katsina and Lieutenant Shehu Musa Yar'Adua. Their goal was to weaken the old regional power blocks and establish a federal system with a stronger central authority.
It got to the stage when this Constituent Assembly statement was became almost a threat to the breakup of Nigeria. We had to do something, to remove, what causes that fear. And politically, I thought the only thing that we should do was, to create, to break up the, all those regions, and to ensure that no region and now new states would be too big to be a threat, to the unity of the country, and the fear of the fear of that domination by one particular state.
For Ojukwu, however, this was more than administrative restructuring. It was a direct threat. The Eastern region, previously unified under a single political and military command, now lost control over crucial oil-producing areas in Niger Delta. its political influence, already fragile, was further diminished. In Enugu, Ojukwu convened his top military advisors, Colonel Alexander Maduebo, Chief of Staff of the Eastern Military, warned that the move might force the Eastern region to consider full sovereignty. But even as he spoke, the weight of the responsibility rested heavily on Ojukwu's shoulder. Protect the life of his people or risk being complicit in their destruction. The morning of May 30, 1967 was tense. Military officers, civil leaders, and regional chiefs assembled in Enugu for what would become historic declaration. Colonel Maduebo ensured that the military units were positioned to maintain order, while civil servants prepared documents to formalize the announcement. At 8:30 a.m., Ojukwu stepped to address the assembly. His words, measured yet firm, will be remembered as a formal statement of Eastern Nigerian intent. He said, "Fellow countrymen and women, you the people of Eastern Nigeria, conscious of the supreme authority of the Almighty God all over mankind, aware that you can no longer be protected in your lives and in your property by any government based outside Eastern Nigeria, believing that you were born free and have certain inalienable rights which can best be preserved by yourselves, determined to dissolve all political and other ties between you and the former Federal Republic of Nigeria." With these words, the Eastern region asserted sovereignty. Colonel Maduebo and other military leaders maintained discipline, ensuring that announcement proceeded without incident. Regional chiefs and civil authorities voiced their support, recognizing the declaration as necessary for civilian protection. Ojukwu continued, "Now I, therefore, Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, Military Governor of the Eastern Nigeria, by virtue of authority, do hereby solemnly proclaim that the territory and the region known and called the Eastern Nigeria shall henceforth be an independent sovereign state of the name and title Republic of Biafra." In the assembly, the weight of the history was palpable. For many, this was not just a political act, but a moral necessity, a desperate attempt to safeguard lives and dignity in the wake of repeated violence and broken promises. The federal government in Lagos responded swiftly, labeling the declaration as rebellion. President Gowon stated that measures were being prepared to restore unity. Civilians across the eastern region reacted with a mixture of fear and hope. Northern Igbos migrated towards south for safety. Trade, communications, and daily life faced immediate disruption. Internationally, recognition was limited. Tanzania, Gabon, Cote d'Ivoire, Zambia, and Haiti offered support, but major powers like Britain and United States remained neutral. Economic embargoes and blockades began to shape Biafra's fragile economy. The declaration had archived its immediate political goal, asserting sovereignty, but it also exposed the new state to the pressure of isolation, conflict, and international scrutiny.
If this is what is required for nations of the world to be aware of our existence, then that I'm prepared to do it. This is precisely what we're doing. Recognition has been overemphasized for quite some time. I am aware historically of a number of countries that have remained in existence for years before official diplomatic recognition.
The failure of Aburi Accord combined with Gowon's 12-state creation had left Eastern leaders with a stark choice: submit to perceived subjugation or assert independence. Ojukwu's decision was informed by both moral responsibility and political strategy. His advisors, including Colonel Maduebo, carefully coordinated military readiness while emphasizing civilian protection. Gowon, on the other hand, sought to maintain national unity, but underestimated the depth of mistrust and the speed at which the Eastern leaders would act. In the broader context, the Biafra Declaration revealed the limits of diplomacy when trust is absent and the risks inherent in ethnically divided federal system. It also set the stage for the coming conflict, illustrating how political maneuvering, territorial control, and resource distribution could escalate into war.
If civil war comes, and I do think it is imminent, you're quite right, it will for us be the price of freedom. Our people here have for a long time been prepared for this eventuality, and I am confident of their readiness. I think that when it does come, that the people on the other side would be surprised as to what they're going to get. And I'm confident that it will not last long.
Within weeks, the Nigerian Federal Army prepared operational plans. By July 6, 1967, military action against Biafra would commence, marking the official start of Nigerian Civil War. The Declaration of Biafra underscores key lessons. Miscommunication and mistrust can rapidly escalate into existential crisis. Leadership decisions carry life or death consequences for civilian populations. Political and economic power is inseparable from military strategy in fragile states. International recognition may be limited, leaving new states vulnerable to isolation. These lessons would echo throughout the 3-year conflict, shaping both Biafra and the Federal Republic of Nigeria in profound ways. May 30th, 1967 was a turning point. A nation's fault lines, political, ethnic, and economic, became visible to the world. The Republic of Biafra had been declared. The seeds of war, famine, resilience were sown that day, and the world will soon witness the consequences of choice made under pressure, fear, and moral responsibility. History would remember May 30th not just as dates, but as moments when the struggle between survival and unity reached its decisive point.
I think what I have here is sufficient to maintain the integrity of Biafra and more.